So I would now like to introduce Olivia for anyone who may not already know her. Olivia is a coach, mentor and facilitator with over 25 years experience in the recruitment profession. She started her recruitment career with Microsoft back in the early 90s, helping to hire localization engineers from around Europe. And then having gotten the bug for recruitment, she then joined the agency world, initially working as a tech recruiter, and then subsequently joining large agencies like Morgan McKinley, CPL and Michael Page to help them grow business and managing recruitment teams on their behalf. In 2019, she set up her own business and is now working with individuals and businesses to assist them to set and meet their goals and objectives. So a very warm welcome, and I'm going to pass the baton over to you, Olivia.
Great, thank you so much, Siobhan. Lovely to be here this morning and great to see so many people have logged on. I think we're in the 80+ numbers wise. As Siobhan said, I'm going to do a session this morning around techniques and tips for top bidders. I have, as Siobhan said, worked with some fantastic companies in the recruitment space, and I have worked with some amazing recruiters across those companies and had the privilege of seeing what works and would love to bring some of that back to you all today and hopefully some good takeaways. So I have a slide deck that we're going to go through, and that should take maybe 30-35 minutes. There's quite a lot of information on it, so I will get through that. If, as Anna said, you can put any questions in the chat box and we'll make sure we address them towards the end of the session. But again, thank you all for signing in. We're now at 90 people. Okay, so just what we want to look at are the techniques really and tips for today's top bidders today. Anna, I'm just not able to, Anna, can you, it's not, some reason I'm not able to move the screen, Anna, so.
You want to just request, oh, hang on, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I've just given it to you now. You should be okay.
Okay. Just one moment, everybody. There's always a little bit of technology to, something not working here, Anna. 1 second, everybody. Yeah. No, Anna, unfortunately, I'm not able to control the screen from this side.
Can you send a request to control it and I can just approve it?
Yeah, just doing that. Yeah. That's gone through to you, but it's still, is that, I've lost you there now. Apologies about this, everybody. We should be getting it sorted in a second. Now, is the screen still sharing, Anna?
No.
No.
So do you want me to just share it and I'll just move the slides?
Yeah, I think that's the best thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, great. So just moving on to the first session, or the first slide. And if you can move the screen, yeah, great. So we're all using technology all day, every day in terms of our work, and it's helping us to identify the talent that we're looking for our clients. Effectively, the technology that we use is going to help us find the right people, but what we need are the really good skills of a great recruiter to create the outcome and to close those deals that we're looking to close. I'm going to have to ask Anna to move it. Yeah. So looking at what your brand is, who are you? That's the most important thing to come to your desk with every morning when you're setting out in your day. It's understanding who you are and how that is going to, sorry, this is just not sharing for me again, how it is you're going to pitch yourself to your clients. Are you able to keep that moving, Anna, for me? Thank you. So the questions to ask yourself are, what do you stand for? So what's your identity? How are you going to communicate this? So what your elevator pitch is. So when you're talking to your clients, what it is you're going to tell them about yourself. How are you going to succinctly let them know what it is you're bringing to the market and what's going to set you apart from the competition in the market. What I'd always say to people is the most important thing is to be authentic and be honest. We can't be all things to all people, but what we do bring to our clients is what we are expert at. And effectively knowing what that is, knowing your own identity, your business's identity, and being able to communicate that across to your client is going to get the best conversations going for you. So then knowing what your market is, and we would always talk about mapping our market in recruitment. So really understanding what it is that you're working in, what market. So you might be a technology recruiter, you might be a life sciences recruiter. Effectively, whichever market that you work in, understand what that is and take the time to research that market. In my own mind, it's really important to be a specialist. Clients looking for the more niche skills, that's where the money is to be made. Those are the clients that need your expertise, and that's where you want to you can make the best offering. Where I would always have said to trainee recruiters, it's better to be inch wide and mile deep. So really understanding what it is that you're bringing to the marketplace. So if you're looking at, let's say it's the pharma industry, and choosing a particular skill set that you're going to find for your clients and knowing that really well. And likewise, on behalf of your candidates, knowing the market that's available to them and knowing it really well. So rather than trying to be all things to all people, choosing a space and knowing it at a very in-depth level is really important. So we talk about being a subject matter expert in your area. So understanding what it is, what the market is doing, what the clients are looking for, and what skills the candidates have, and bringing those two pieces together. In relation to content, sharing and creating relevant content, again, we all work on LinkedIn all of the time, so there's huge amounts of content being created by other people. It's really important to stay in touch with this. It really helps you to understand your marketplace. It's good to share that content and to become a voice in your area and to be seen, to be active in your area. And also creating your own content. Many of the businesses that you work in will work with you, the marketing departments, etc., to create white papers around different areas. So being part of that, it all builds into being the expert. And the last thing I'd say on that is never stop learning. I am in recruitment 25 plus years. In fact, I noticed this morning when I was looking at something, this is going to be my 4th decade in the recruitment industry. Nothing has changed, but everything has changed, if that makes sense. So the way we work doesn't really change. A lot of what we do is around building relationships. But on the other hand, knowing what's happening in the marketplace, what companies are coming in, who's leaving, what technologies are changing, what's important to people, what are people's objectives and goals. So always learn about that, because that's what you're presenting back. And that's relevant to both your candidates and to your clients. Thanks, Anna. So in relation to if you're working on permanent roles, and many of you will either work on permanent or contract, some of you might dual desk. But my tips in terms of if you're working on permanent roles, the ones you want to go after is where there's a talent shortage, your clients will need you most. Niche skills, again, those are the ones your clients will struggle to attract easily themselves, and they'll partner with you to look for that. Where your clients are looking to have a partnership with you, and again, I think this is hugely important. You play a really, really, really key role for your clients. People are our most important asset in any business. So you want to be able to partner with a client, and of course, where you can get exclusivity, and exclusivity can be for a short term or long term with your clients. But if you're working a role with a client, and if you can ask them to give you a couple of days or a week so that you can really drop everything and research the market to find the ideal candidate, that's a really good place to be. The ones that I would stay away from, or maybe have it on a lower priority list of my working days, where I'm competing with the client. So if the client is still looking to hire this person or these people directly, it may not be the best use of my time. And as recruiters, we need to be really smart with our use of our time. There are so many hours in the day. We want to use that well. We don't want to burn ourselves out working on roles where, you know, the likelihood of filling that role is low. So be careful which roles you work. The high volume, low value work, again, why I bring this up is when you're building your future recruitment desk and your name as a recruiter, it's really important that you look at the medium term and the long term. So if roles are, you know, of low value, does that mean you have to keep reinventing yourself month after month? So, you know, what I would say to people is, you know, be careful about what you take on and where you invest your time, your energy, and how you build out your business. And where there's a lack of engagement, and again, this is speaking to the client side, if a client really isn't engaging with you, it's going to be really difficult to sell their role to your candidate base. So again, be you know, careful about what you work on. There's an old expression, and many of you will be very familiar with it. You can be a very busy fool in recruitment, as in you can work extremely hard, but maybe not get the rewards that the person beside you is getting because they're being really careful what they take on and what they work on, where they invest themselves and their time. So that's on the permanent side. On the contract side or temp roles, again, you're looking to work where clients are looking for niche skills. You want to work with people who are career temps, because again, you're not just working for today, you're working for the medium term and the longer term. So particularly in the contract and temp market, you're building very, very strong, long-lasting relationships with the individuals that you work with, because effectively you're becoming their agent for them. You want to work with professional contractors, so people who are doing this as a long-term career. Again, you're getting to know this person, you're getting to understand their needs, their objectives, their goals. You're looking at longer-term assignments. Again, there's great value in this, because if you're working on an assignment with a client, which will go on for 6 months or 10 months, etc., then you really are getting the value back on all of the time you invest upfront. And ideally, you're working on business critical work so that it's really important to the client and to the candidate. So what they're doing is of high value. And again, that's where you can charge your nice healthy margins or markups, and know that you're in it for the long term. The work that I'm always wary of is where it's a very low margin. And again, I'm not saying that there won't be projects that you work on where the margin will be lower. But if all of your work is very low margin, you may find that you're constantly having to reinvent yourself month after month, which can get very, very exhausting actually. So you want to work on the business critical roles that have a higher margin, and therefore you're in a space where you're building long-term relationships with both clients and candidates. Again, be careful of working on work that could be done by talent pooling, and many of your businesses will have that offering to clients. So it's done very differently. If we invest all our time as individual recruiters into that work, again, we're not building for the long term. Short-term project work, tech replaceable roles, and low skill. Again, there's a time and a place where this will be part of the business, but for you as an individual recruiter, if you want to build out a desk in a specific area, just, you know, have a look at what's happening and what the medium term and long term is going to look like for you, and try to direct yourself in a way that you're building into the future as opposed to just for today. So everybody will tell you it's a numbers game in recruitment, and it is. You know, we do have to talk to X amount of candidates, X amount of clients, work certain numbers of jobs, set up certain numbers of meetings, send CVs, etc. But knowing your numbers and knowing your own KPIs, we all have to learn to forecast. We have targets that we have to meet as recruiters. So knowing what that target is and then working backwards from there into your forecasting. So if I want to be, let's say I want to bill 20,000 every month, how many roles do I need to fill if I'm a permanent recruiter? How many contractors or temps do I need on the ground to hit that number? So you work backwards from there and you're thinking, okay, so how many jobs do I need on? How many qualified job orders? How many client calls and meetings do I need to set up in order to have those qualified job orders? How many candidates will I need to speak to? How many meetings with candidates do I need to set up? How many CVs do I need to send on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? How many interviews are clients going to need to be doing for me? So if I know that, you know, in a month, if I can have 20 client interviews, I'm likely to get 10 second interviews, and I'm likely to get 5 job offers. And of those 5 job offers, 3 of those are likely to be accepted. then I know the work that I have to start putting in order to pipeline and forecast to hit my target. And then obviously understanding how much you charge, what your rates are, your margin and your markup, and being very clear about that, having a bottom line that you don't go below, knowing the difference between a margin and a markup. And this will be very familiar territory for all the contract and temp recruiters out there. And then obviously on your permanent rates, and knowing the value of that so that you are comfortable having that discussion with your client and understanding what it is that you're bringing and why you're charging these rates. So in terms of the recruiters that I've worked with and seeing what works best, the really obvious one is the best recruiters relate, not transact. So what do I mean by that? And post-COVID, things haven't really changed at all, in the sense of you may not have been able to meet your clients face-to-face due to restrictions. However, you will be able to have FaceTime with people via technology, as we're doing on Zoom today, using Microsoft Teams, using FaceTime, using WhatsApp video, etc. So the really important piece here is you're building relationships. Recruitment, it's a sales process, absolutely, but you're selling a service, you're not selling a product. So the important piece here is you've got the clients, it's a bit of a chicken and an egg. You've got your client and your candidate. You need to build relationships with both, and to do that to the best of your ability, it's about FaceTime. And as I say, even if you can't meet people in meetings today or tomorrow, you know, you will be able to set up either Teams or Zoom calls, etc., so that you get to understand people better. And a lot of the reason I will really push that with people, and it's forever it shall be thus, and it has always been the same. In terms of communication, we learn a lot when we're with somebody, and we're listening, not just with our ears, but you're hearing what people are and saying, you're seeing their body language, you're able to tune in more so to what the person wants when you're having FaceTime with them, as opposed to doing everything via email. Phone time is obviously very good as well, but there is nothing like the face-to-face. It allows you to collaborate with your clients. It allows them to understand what it is that you're bringing to the table. And there's a great part of recruitment is about likability. It's getting to know your clients and your candidates and getting to like each other and to like working with each other. Also, we've talked about technology helping us to find talent earlier on. The best recruiters are expert talent finders. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. Recruitment is a game of multitasking for sure, but you've got to be really good at finding the talent. If the talent is coming to find you, that's often too late, because if they have to come and find you, they're also finding your competitors at the same time. So I would be a huge pusher of people out there finding talent. So making time in your day, in your week, to do those searches on LinkedIn, etc., and reaching out to people. And that requires being very tenacious, being very organized. It's a really busy game. There's a lot to be done. But if you manage your time correctly and if you're organized, you'll do the right things so that you become that top biller that you want to be. Perseverance, or a lot of people talk about resilience. It's a big part of this game. Rejection is part of the journey in recruitment. We've all experienced it at some level, whether it's getting right to job offer and then a role being turned down when you've worked on it for months, if it's a permanent role, or a client choosing to work with a different recruiter. But you've got to keep persevering. It's something that we do. Salespeople do it no matter what they're selling. But as recruiters, it's really important to know and acknowledge that that's part of it. Don't take it too personally. You do have to dust yourself down and carry on. And then the other really important word I would always use with the recruiters is influence. You are influential. It's back to what I'm saying about becoming a subject matter expert. You know your market, so you will be influencing your clients and your candidates' decisions. So a candidate might come to you looking for 10 different things. What you need to be able to do is use your influence and your knowledge to influence the candidate's thinking around, well, what is realistic? I've often had to say to clients, you know, I'm a recruiter, not a magician. You know, I cannot find you what's not out there. However, what I can find you is the following. and let's look at what will work for you and what not. And that's the influential piece. And if you know your market really well, you will influence clients' thinking, their thought processes, and similarly with candidates. Now, we talked about recruiters being excellent talent finders, which is wonderful, and you've gone out there and you've found some fabulous talent. The next stage is really to engage with that talent and engage with your talent really well. The candidate experience is key. You know, it's a competitive market out there, but people, you know, think about how you like to be treated yourself as a candidate. We've all had to go on a job search at some stage of our lives, whether it was in college for an internship or our first job out of school, etc., etc. So the experience that you give your candidates is really, really important. So knowing what a great experience should look like. So just taking a couple of moments to yourself at different times of your day and week, and really thinking about, what does this feel like to the candidate? If somebody sends in their CV in response to a job that I've advertised, how will I treat them? How will I respond to them? When will I respond to them? So knowing your touch points with your candidates, being authentic, being honest, you know, giving the bad news as well as the good news if somebody isn't suitable. But how do I relay that information without tying myself up in knots and using all of my day that's not going to result in creating a great shortlist for my client, which is what I'm here to do. But at the same time, a candidate who might apply for a role and isn't suitable may well be suitable for another role that you'll work or for one of your colleagues. So having that process for people applying to your business or replying to your roles and doing it effectively and efficiently. So again, in your teams, with your organizations, at your own desk, what does it look like right now? How can I improve on it and do that, you know, improve that experience for your candidates? And that will help you to keep building your pipeline. As I said above, it is often too late if the candidate has to come and find you. You want to find the candidates. You want to create your pipeline and manage it. And then understanding your candidate, again, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, and the same can be said of your first impression with your clients. But you're getting to know him or her. You're getting to understand what their objectives are, what's going to make their lives easier, why are they contacting you basically, why are they on the job market, what are their must-haves. And that's a really important, and again, it's back to the listening piece. Asking good questions and listening is a really important part of understanding your candidates, and it's a really important part of their journey with you and their experience. Good candidates will refer other people, so you know, there's lots of reasons that you want to make this work. So what will somebody negotiate on? Because if you go right through the process and you've brought somebody to offer stage, and you know, one of the things they really needed was X number of holidays or flexi time, etc. Or one of the things they'll negotiate on is the salary, as long as they can work from home on Mondays and Fridays. If you have that information up front, it's going to be really valuable information when you come to closing the deal. So knowing what they won't negotiate on, what they cannot negotiate on, and what they will negotiate on. Because when you're closing a deal between a client and a candidate, there is going to be a bit of bartering. You know, you'll rarely get absolutely everything you look for at the outset. A candidate will negotiate, a client will negotiate, and your job is to bring that together. So there's a lot of knowledge that you have to gather along that journey, and starting off on the right foot with a good face-to-face or FaceTime meeting with your candidate will allow you to start building that information so that you can use it through the process. And then listening, which I mentioned again, and speaking their language. And speaking somebody's language is what makes somebody very comfortable to work with you, because they feel understood. They'll feel that they can trust you if you can speak their language. So then looking at your clients and understanding your brief from your clients, some of the really important questions to ask your clients and to listen carefully to their answers. Why does the job exist? Are they replacing somebody? Is it a new project that's come on board? Have they won a new deal, signed up a new client themselves, etc.? So all of this, your salespeople, so you're going to be selling this job back to your candidates. So you'll need some really good information on it. Having a job spec and firing it off to your candidate and hoping for the best is one way of doing it. However, the more you can get information you can gather, the more you can influence your candidates to go for the role that you're looking to fill. So what purpose does the job serve? What value will it add to the organization? What impact will it have on the organization? These are all the things. If I'm your candidate and you're calling me and saying, Olivia, I've come across this great role with this organization. You may not have heard of them. They're just coming into the Dublin market. This is what they're planning to do. They're looking for somebody who will be very strategic in doing X, Y, or Z. The impact of your role will be, it's, you know, and you're selling me the role. So in order to sell me the role, you're going to have asked all of the right questions of your client. So it's not simply about your client sending you a job spec. It's about getting time with your client to go beneath the bonnet so that you can then represent your client as best as possible to the right candidates. Knowing how long a role has been open, again, this is an important question to ask of your client. If the role has been open a couple of months, what else has been done to fill it? Let's understand here, because when I'm taking on a new job and I'm saying, okay, this is going to be part of my forecast for August because I'm taking it on today. I expect it to have a shortlist in a week's time. There's going to be first, second interview. So I'm mapping it all out ahead of me. I want to know what else has been done to fill up, because I want to know, where do I go to search for these candidates? Have all the obvious places been done? Has the client interviewed lots of people and just not been able to fill this role? Is the salary correct on the role, etc.? So there's a huge amount of detective work and information to be gathered at the outset. That will help you to use your time correctly and appropriately, and it will allow you to sell this job to the right audience. So those are questions I would have on my brief with my clients. So then moving on to the expectations management, and again, it's all part of the client and the candidate journey with you. So setting very clear expectations. Quite often as recruiters, we allow other people to set the expectations and tell us what will work. Again, it's part of the influence and doing it carefully with your clients and with your candidates. What can they expect from you? And be very clear about that. So if somebody's applied for a role and they're a strong candidate and you're going to, put them forward for this role, when will they expect to hear back from you? Will it be this week? Will it be next week, etc.? And what will come from there? Similarly with clients, if a client gives you a job brief, set the expectations. One of the things I learned to do very early on in my career was ask the client for a meeting in order to go through a shortlist. You won't always get that meeting. Again, taking COVID into account, you might be doing that by Teams or by Zoom or whatever technology you like to use or your client likes to use. But if you're saying to a client, okay, I'm going to drop everything, I'm going to work this role, I'm going to have a short list of candidates for you, I would hope to have that ready for Tuesday. Can we put half an hour in the diary so I can talk you through my rationale about these 3 candidates, etc. So being very clear, then meeting that commitment. If you say to somebody, I'm going to be back to you on Monday, I'll have information for you around that role, or I'll have further information or a shortlist for a client, meet that commitment. Ideally, get ahead of the commitment. So if you're going to have the shortlist on Monday next, you might call the client first thing Monday morning and say, yeah, I'm ready to go. I have 3 candidates for you. Be realistic, obviously. Don't promise what you can't deliver. There will be times you'll make commitments that you can't meet. Communicate that, be reliable, ring the client. I had hoped to have candidates for you. Ring the candidate. I had hoped to have feedback for you. Unfortunately, it's going to take another couple of days. My client is on holidays, my client has gone on sick leave, etc. But just be honest, communicate with people and be reliable. I've mentioned here about exclusivity, and for a lot of people, when they think of exclusivity, they think only with the client. Absolutely, it's great to get a role on exclusively, even if it's for a couple of days, just so you can get a head start on it. Similarly with candidates, I would always ask candidates if it's somebody that I genuinely believe that I can place and that I have the right relationships in the marketplace that I can introduce them to. I would always ask, look, can you give me a couple of days to work, or a week to work on this? If I get back to you by Friday and have some, these are the clients I want to approach on your behalf, would you allow me a week to do that before you approach any other agencies? you know, again, it's always worth asking the question. It just gives you that time to really work with either your top candidates or your top clients. And then back to the listing piece again, hear what people are saying, hear what they're not saying, and really work with the information that you're picking up from your client meetings and calls and candidate meetings and calls. So that's on expectations. Then interviews, and again, often, you know, there's so much to do as a recruiter, but we all know getting the call from a client, I want to interview those 3 candidates. That's where the magic happens. That's where we're really moving through the funnel and towards closing our deals. So, you know, putting time into ensuring that the interview goes well, prepping candidates, I've put that there at the end, always do interview prep. It is so important to take time out. It might mean, you know, getting on a call at 7 or 8 in the evening when the candidate is free, but absolutely make the time. If you've got somebody showing up, they're representing you, they're an ambassador for you, ensure that you've taken the time to help that candidate, and don't take it for granted that the candidate knows the location or is familiar with even the dress code, etc. Take the time out. This is really crucial piece. Be easy to deal with, so be available to your candidates, whether it's by email or text, etc. Give the candidate control or choices around that. You know, you want to put the candidate at their ease. You want to make sure that they know they can access you if they're panicking about whether it be, I don't know where the business is, or I need to ask you a question in relation to the person interviewing me, etc. So give the candidate some control over that piece. Discussing appropriate channels of communication. Obviously, a candidate may well be at work and you're trying to contact them to say you want them at an interview tomorrow. Ensure that you are not stepping over any boundaries. You do not want to be ringing a candidate who's at work with their manager beside them to talk to them about an interview that you're very excited about, and you're, you know, they're quite ill at ease because somebody can maybe overhear the conversation. So ensure you're using appropriate channels of communication. Providing the information at an appropriate time. Again, as I say, there is no point, you know, downloading a huge amount of information to a candidate who might be standing, you know, outside their office. You need to say, have you time to talk? Can you check in with me later, etc. So ensuring that you're making it as easy as possible for your candidate going to the interview, and then sending guides or cheat sheets. So we all know as recruiters, we have a really good sense of what works well at an interview. Share that with your candidates. They may not have been to a job interview for 2 or 3 years. So, you know, don't assume anything. Help your candidates through the process. And then, I'm just watching the time here. People will remember how you make them feel, for sure. They won't remember everything you say, but if we all want repeat business, and repeat business and referrals are really important. So when you're working with your clients and with your candidates, always accentuate the positive. Candidates can be quite nervous about working with recruiters. They're not used to this environment. It's second nature to us, but you need to make people feel good about themselves. Don't leave things to chance. So remove any stressors, and that's, you know, that might be, you know, where the interview is taking place. I know I've gone out to client meetings in places like, I don't know, City West or Blanchardstown, etc., and not being able to find the business. That can be really stressful. It can be stressful for me when I'm going to a meeting, but that feeling for a candidate can completely throw them at an interview stage. So again, work to make sure that you're making life easy for them. They will be grateful for it. Don't assume, clarify, communicate, put yourself in their shoes, and as always, regardless of where the process ends, whether it's in a successful placement or whether the candidate decides, actually this job isn't for me, I've done 2 interviews, etc. And similarly with the client, always thank people for the opportunity to work with them, because it is a privilege to help people in their careers. It is a privilege to work with clients to fill their roles. And, you know, I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, and people will appreciate that approach. So on to aftercare service, and we're coming near the end now. You'll be glad to hear, so we can have some questions and answers. I would always keep in touch, and again, that might be with a candidate that you've placed into the role they want, or a contractor or a temp. It is important to keep in touch. You are part of their journey. if it's somebody starting a permanent job, just to ensure they're okay to start on whatever date. And once they've started, just to check in and ask them, is everything okay? You will be sending, or your company will be sending, an invoice to your client for this work. It's important that you ensure that the candidate has actually started, that they haven't found another job and forgotten to tell you. So keeping in touch for that reason. And also with your client, it's no harm to ring them when somebody's been there a couple of weeks and say, look, I know John started with you. Is everything going okay? And of course, is there anything else I can do to help? Offering additional value add services, so that might be salary surveys, etc., to clients, looking for feedback. So never be afraid to ask your client or your candidate, you know, how was this service for you? Would there be anything you'd like me to have done differently? Is there anything that I could have helped you more with? And then using that feedback in your future interactions. And of course, always ask for referrals. Much business is done by people referring people to each other. It's the easiest way of doing your business development. And I know particularly here in the Irish market, people love referring people on. They do it. You just need to ask. So I think that's us in terms of a couple of final tips for your techniques, but value every conversation. Complacency is your biggest enemy. Don't ever take anything for granted. Every conversation could lead to that next client who's going to be what I used to call your pet client. We all like to have one or two companies that we're really close to and that we're the go-to person for, more if possible, but you never know from what conversation that will emerge. Aim to be a problem solver, because that's what we are as recruiters, both for our clients and our candidates. Always ask what else or who else. So what else can I do for you? Or is there anybody else I could speak to in your organization, or anybody else that would welcome a call or value a call from our business? Be generous with your time and knowledge. So again, I talked earlier about creating content, sharing content. You'll get known in the marketplace and people will want to come to you and they'll want to help you if you're helping them. And then sell yourself and the benefits of working with you. So it's your brand. You work for an organization, the organization has a brand, but you as an individual within that organization is who the person is relating to. So quite often, you know, I know from clients, they'll work with a particular company, of course, but if a recruiter moves from X to Y, they'll follow the recruiter if the recruiter has done a great job for the client. So these are relationships you're building for your future, not just for today. I think that brings us to the end of today's slides. Hopefully you have seen or heard or found some good information in those tips. And I think I can hand over to Jimmy, is it?
Yes, thank you, Olivia, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be joining you all this morning. Olivia, thanks for sharing the knowledge there and I think some really useful tips with us. And Siobhan, just to thank you for your kind words as you opened this morning's event. What struck me actually as I listened was that anybody in sales from any industry or profession could have been listening in today and learned a lot. Sales really is, you know, it's about relationships, it's about communication. And I always say, you know, over communicate, do it before you think you need to. And even when you have nothing new to share, like being in the dark and wondering what's happening must be up there as one of the worst feelings, I'd imagine, for most people. We've quite a diverse range of delegates logged on today. Some very experienced who will know both Olivia and Siobhan extremely well. But others are probably new to the recruitment industry. So I'm going to put this to both of you, but Siobhan, to give Olivia time to catch her breath, I might start with you. Many will be aware of your role as Vice President of the NRF, you're a Director in CPL, but you might just share with us a brief history of your career, which will help people better understand the context of the answers you might give to some of the questions today.
Yeah, perfect. So in the top biller context, I suppose I have 19 years recruitment experience. I started out as a recruiter. So I've been a top biller myself once upon a time, and I would have led top billing recruitment teams. So the top biller in my team was the very top biller would have generated over $1 million in fees every year. And my own top billing claim to fame was that I would have been the highest biller in Morgan McKinley when I was with them in 2009, which was the height of the recession. So I've kind of seen the roller coaster ride of the highs and lows of boom and bust and you know, of what it takes to become a high performer, and the journey it takes, I suppose, from starting out as a fledgling, you know, salesperson as a recruitment consultant and growing your desk and becoming, I suppose, that top performer, which is what everyone is aspiring to achieve.
Great, Siobhan. So just starting out then, just getting used to the whole industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Olivia, in your introduction, Siobhan mentioned that before setting up the coaching business, you know, your career had seen you work with, you know, firms like, you know, Microsoft internally, and then with CPL, Michael Page, Morgan McKinley. Have we missed anything there?
I think I worked with ContractingPLUS for a little while, Jimmy.
Well, you did, and that was probably your most prestigious success on your CV by all accounts.
That was really interesting, actually, because I did that in the middle of the recession. Joined what was then known as CXC, and Jimmy, it was prior to you joining us or joining the business. But yeah, what I love about, you know, working for different companies in the recruitment space and having worked at both sides of the table, Microsoft was a fabulous introduction. Naturally, it just gave me that bug for recruitment. I just felt this is amazing. You get to talk to people all over the world and, you know, get them really excited. At that time, moving to Dublin, it was, gosh, somewhere in the 90s. Most of you mightn't even have been born at that stage. But that was really exciting. I loved it. I think the one thing that's always stood out for me in recruitment, and what I would always say to anybody considering going into the business, is you get to work for the most amazing companies at a real close-up level. And whether that be smaller startups, whether it be, you know, really exciting new businesses. Iona Technology was one of my pet clients way back. And I remember working with the guys down there, and these guys were in Silicon Valley and doing amazing stuff. And here's little old me working on Dame Street, finding the right people from them. Back then it was sending CVs by fax, etc. And then I moved to Sydney and worked for Michael Page, which was really high end and really swish and amazing offices, looking at the Opera House and thinking, gosh, I don't know how I do this over here. It's very different to Dame Street in Dublin, where no matter who you rang, you found out you were a cousin or a friend, or, you know, you could connect with people very easily. But again, it didn't change. What I learned through that, it is about relationships. And that was where I did a lot of contract recruitment, was in Sydney. And what I really stood out for me was getting to know the contract market. It was actually about the individual, and it was great. Like, you'd go for a pint with them or a coffee with them or a walk with them or whatever and have a chat, and you get to understand the person. And it was really about creating that connection. And of course,
so back to relationships again.
Totally. And you won't.
What was the best or most unique cold approach you ever saw work when you were trying to get in the door with a new client?
Yeah, that's no, it's, for me, the easy answer to that is, I'm going to do all this work for you. It's not going to cost you anything. You know, okay. I'm going to come, I'm going to spend time with you. I'm going to learn about your organization. I'm going to sell your organization. I'm going to help create a value proposition to the market about you. It is going to cost you nothing unless I deliver. So the no full, no fee, that to me, it's, you know.
So nothing fancy, you know, nothing flashy. It's just, you know, exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah, I don't get paid unless I deliver. So you can have all of my expertise, all of my consultancy work up front. I will only pay you when you hire from me. And even then, I'm going to stay with you to make sure that the person that you've hired is doing the job you need them to do, is adding value to your organization. And should something go wrong, I'll still be here. And I will either work with you to refill that role, etc. So I'm working, you're getting the value of my market knowledge, and it's costing you nothing until you have found something that's of real value to you. And every recruiter should have that at the forefront of their mind when they're approaching a client.
So, okay, so look, there's just an element, I suppose, there, you know, you need to be organized, you need to be tenacious, you need to persevere. But I might jump to you, Siobhan, because you've been a top biller, you've worked with top billers, you've managed top billers. So you'll have seen firsthand that, you know, all recruiters, they're not made equal. So what for you is a key trait that might not be the most obvious that you've seen every top biller has?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I would say there's not just one, it's actually a number, but they thread through everyone who's performing at a very high level. And I think firstly, they're incredibly competitive. So they are like dogs with a bone. They will not rest until they have delivered, you know, if a job lands on their desk, they will ensure to turn that around and get the CVs in as fast a time as possible. Their customer care is second to none. They're very highly networked, so they always realize that actually that whole process of the candidate becomes your client, becomes your candidate, it's a cycle that actually can generate new business for you and referrals. So people who are at the very top of their game, they don't tend to have to go out and do as much business development because they've already fostered a huge amount of relationships. So there's a lot of, you know, the positive knock-on impact of doing the groundwork of the fundamentals of recruitment in order to get to that really, you know, peak level. And you've an untapped potential. You know, that's what I always used to say when, you know, to any consultants in my team, nobody's going to say now that that's enough, you've built enough or delivered enough. So that's very entrepreneurial if you embrace that with the right mindset. I think a few other things I used to do myself was I always had a sticky note on my computer, 2 sticky notes actually. And the first was, it had a little phrase on it and it was like, is this making you money? And it was a really firm reminder to stay laser focused on the activities that actually generate the fees, because actually, as Olivia said, you can be a very busy fool in recruitment and you can waste a lot of time in administration and things that actually don't, you know, add up to the numbers. And I think the other thing I used to have was I had a list of the activities that I needed to achieve to get to my goal, to get to my target. So I knew the amount of CVs I would have. It could have been, I can't remember now, but it might have been 15 to 20 CVs out a week. And I would have that note up on my sticky to remind me, so that every day, if I hadn't hit my target of getting 3 to 4 CVs out a day, I would need to compensate and balance that out the next day. Because you know, really top billers and really high performers control the controllables. So they know all the ingredients that they need to put into the mix to succeed, and they follow the process religiously. So it's a really interesting one, Jimmy, because I don't think it's just one particular thing. I think it's a series of multiple things in terms of skills and attributes, but I think they can all be learned and they can all be honed. And I think you're always learning in our industry. I mean, the world has changed dramatically, even in the last few years. You know, how you embrace the trends can really set you apart as well as a consultant. And I think even things like, you know, adding value in different ways to customers can help you stand out from the crowd in the marketplace.
Okay, very good. I actually must talk to you offline about what brand of sticky notes you're using, because I can't get any to stick to my monitor. They keep falling off. But that's a different conversation. I've just seen a question actually in the chat. If you do have questions, I'm watching them in the Q&A box if people want to put them in there. But I've seen one in the chat here from Shane Connolly. And that was a very good one. What's the typical daily routine or habits you do now that you wish you did at the start of your career? And he gives an example. I split my day into X amount of chunks to focus on this or to focus on that. Are you banging the phones for 2 hours? You know, is it admin? You know, what have you learned in your career that you say, actually, if I was starting out now, I wish I'd structured my day like this, and that would give me the best chance of success? I'm actually going to put that to both of you. Maybe we start with you, Olivia.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always, and I am a procrastinator, so I tend to put the things I don't like off. And I've just done I do a lot of, I start every day with meditation actually. And, you know, everybody talks about mindfulness, etc. But I have found that by doing that, by completely taking 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and as they say, the time to meditate is when you don't have time to, then you definitely need to meditate. So when I find myself going into that zone of not doing the hard stuff, I take myself away. I do nothing. I do I make sure that I completely clear my mind, and then come back 15, 20 minutes later and say, okay, what are the things that I'm not facing? And I do those first. And that sets me up for the day. And since I've started to do that, every day goes better, because I don't have that thing on my shoulder going, I never rang Jimmy, and that is affecting every call I make today, knowing that I have something that has to be dealt with that I'm avoiding. It just clears my head. And that's one of the things. that's one thing. The other thing I like to do is really understand, for me, what my, you know, my biochemistry is around timing. So I know when I'm really good at selling. I know the times of the day and the times of the week, the days of the week. I will always, if I want to bring on new business, I'll do it on Thursdays and Fridays, because I know, and it's whether I'm influencing the market or whether the market is just more relaxed on a Thursday or Friday, and a combination of both. I know that works best. So
what you're saying, Olivia, is a lot of it, it's kind of, there's no secret sauce really. You have to look internally and see what works best for you, what you're finding works best. It's a little bit of trial and error always.
You have to know yourself. And I think anybody, you know, we all know there's certain things that has to be done in the day and in the week in recruitment, and there's a process, etc. And, you know, your phone needs to be hopping. You need to be a busy, but not a busy fool. But you also need to bring you to the table. So we're not robots, we're human beings. Our clients and our candidates aren't robots, they're human beings. So it's listening at all levels, but knowing yourself really helps. And you know, I've never been one for presenteeism. I don't think people should be working 12, 15 long days, etc. However, I have no problem working at 10 o'clock at night if it suits you, Jimmy, and you're my candidate or you're my client and I want to work with you because that's smart. I don't agree with people who think, oh, well, I'm in the office 12 hours a day and I'm doing this and I'm doing everything. It's like, listen, I prefer to see you.
There's a couple more questions coming in, so I'm going to just quickly jump across to Siobhan and see, is there anything you want to add to that, Siobhan, specifically?
Yeah, look, I would say that something I learned from when I started out to when I was kind of running teams and helping them structure their days would have been about the importance of working to core hours as well. I'd agree with everything Olivia says, but I think there are times of the day where you really want to focus on things like, you know, the money making activities. So, you know, not the formatting a CV to get it to a client. So I think 10 to 12 and 2 to 4:30 for me were those key times where I'm booking in client meetings, I'm doing my business development because I have a better chance of getting people at those times. I'm doing all the things that I know will directly lead into the outcome that I want to achieve. Anything to do with, you know, administration would come outside those hours. Because if you think about it, at 5 o'clock, you're probably in wind down mode. No client is going to want to talk to you.
Yeah.
If I was doing candidate interviews, I would always do them, you know, 9 a.m. or later, you know, at lunchtime, not eating into my core money making time, you know. So I think, you know, I would have been quite, you know, ruthless actually with my time, because I am a big believer, as Olivia said, about working smarter, not harder. You know, and I think a lot of the best recruiters as well prioritize the things that they know will generate the success. And I think it's about really looking at yourself and putting the mirror up and go, am I spending too much time on the things that actually are not the best productive use of my time?
Okay. There's 2 questions here. I'm going to try and throw them together because I'm conscious of time. The first one is, Olivia, you made reference to recruitment being a numbers game. You know, there's relationships with clients on the one hand, and you've got the candidates on the other side, whether they're temporary hires, whether they're permanent hires, or whether they're contract workers. So what, if any, are the things a contract recruiter needs to focus on if they're moving across from a perm desk? What are the key differences and how do they give themselves the best chance of success? So that's part 1 of the question, which I might throw to you, Olivia, and then Siobhan, if you jump in with part 2, which comes from Jamie, and he asks, do you still think contingent recruitment is the correct option for recruitment in today's world? So first to you, Olivia, what are the main differences?
Becoming a contract recruiter from a perm desk, and I've been that soldier. Again, the mistakes that people make, and that I've probably made, well, I'm sure I've made myself, is I think I know the answers. I think I have the solution for you, Jimmy. I know what you need as a contractor, etc. I know the marketplace, etc. So I'm going to tell you what's going to work. You have to drop that. You're dealing with contractors, professional contractors or lifelong temps. They know what's going on. They know what's out there. They need somebody to help to navigate that path with them and to go on that journey with them and to do the background work and come up with the next opportunity and have their eyes and ears open for the fabulous project that's coming down the road, an IBM or an Oracle or a Microsoft or whatever. But I need to listen to them. And that's my biggest thing, is to get a time and a space with the individuals out there, if they're contracting, professional contractors or long-term temps, and make time and ask the right questions. It's about listening.
And then Siobhan, do you believe, I mean, you're in one of the biggest recruitment agencies in Ireland, but also globally. Is contingent recruitment the right option in today's recruitment industry?
Yeah, look, and I don't think there's any, it depends on the customer needs, and I think it's about actually working and partnering with your customers to tailor the service delivery to the requirements. So, it's hard to do a generic, yes, it is, because I think it very much is dependent on, is it a huge project that actually potentially needs to be outsourced, or is it a smaller amount of business that actually is more suitable to a spot requirement? So, obviously getting retained business is always the dream for any recruiter, because that the relationship is exclusive and that the fee is guaranteed. So that's something that everyone should be aspiring to. But I think whilst the market has evolved quite significantly, particularly over the last kind of 5 years to a decade, in terms of the type of talent solutions that we see being delivered in the marketplace, I think there'll always still be a home for contingent, because there'll always still be a lot of clients who may be smaller and have, not a huge volume of requirements on an annual basis.
Okay, look, the lights are flashing. It's last drinks at the bar. We probably just have time for me to say, I think there is, if I can chime in here from my experience with contracting, I think there's definitely something in here for contingent workers. If you look at Ireland's project economy, which was a report ContractingPLUS did with Trinity College earlier this year, it's available for download on our website. Shameless plug, sorry, but it has stuff in there about the gender pay gap is less if you're a female contractor than if you're a female employee. It has, if you're the older you get and the more experience you get, the more money you make. And actually the over 60s make the most amount of money out of all contractors. So there's some really good insights in there. There is a future. We're seeing remote working. We're seeing people talk about the future of work, which is actually here. And I think one of the biggest things, I think, as an industry, the recruitment industry needs to tune in on this as well. And certainly from our own view in ContractingPLUS, we're doing it, is we need to educate employers, and we need to educate government the difference between what is low value, low skilled work, and that's typically called gig work, and then what's high value, high skilled work, which is typically the project economy in Ireland, which outstrips the gig economy by 5 to 1 in terms of the size. So absolutely, Jamie, I think there's a huge market out there for contingent.
Jimmy, can I just clarify? When I interpreted contingent, I wasn't looking at it as temp and contract. I thought it meant ad hoc. He meant ad hoc, but if he means temp and contract, without a shadow of a doubt, yes. So sorry if I misinterpreted. I'm not sure what he means, because we use contingent sometimes in our world as ad hoc kind of recruitment needs, so where it's on a PSL or a framework, it's not exclusive business. So just important point, because I couldn't agree more. I think actually, if you look at the makeup of even CPL's business, 70% of our revenue comes from temporary or contracting work. It's only going to become bigger as a trend globally. So brilliant. Yeah, just I'm not sure what he means, if he means my version of it or your version of it in contingent, but you can mean both. There's lots more questions I see coming through, but we've run out of time. So I think it's my job now to say a huge thank you to Olivia and Jimmy